Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is Nicholas Coriano. I'm doing something a little different today. I'm standing in front of a whiteboard. Today, we're going to discuss how to put together a management and organizational plan for your business plan, or just a comprehensive management and organizational plan for your business. If you don't have a management and organizational plan, you don't know what team players you want or need in your business to scale your potential business. If you're writing a business plan, you need a management and organizational plan included to understand who the players are, what they do, who they report to, and so on and so forth. Again, my name is Nicholas Coriano, went to business school, went to law school, own a ton of businesses, have consulted over 2,000 clients to develop their feasibility studies, business plans, organizational plans, human resource plans, all types of plans. If there's a plan, I've helped the client develop it. And in today's video, we're going to talk about management and organizational plan. If you're a startup and you only have one employee, this may not be as relevant, but if you plan to scale your business and have multiple employees in the future, then this video is definitely for you. If you have a business that you're already operating and you're looking to scale, or you have massive amounts of employees and you're not getting the most out of them, this video is definitely for you, okay? So let's get to it. The management and organizational plan. So what's included in the management and organizational plan? Well, the first thing that's included is the organizational structure. Okay, so a lot of people call this the org chart, right? Or the organizational structure. I don't know how much you guys can see this, so I'm going to really dig deep here on how hard I write. I want to spend some time on this because this is super important. An org chart technically looks like this, usually looks like this. Okay, there's one guy at the top and there's three guys underneath, right? Or four guys underneath reporting up to them. Now, this is super important. I'm going to highlight this in green to make sure that people can see this. All right, I'm going to do both. So hopefully you guys can see this org chart. But the reason this is so important is because when you first start a business, usually it's just one person, okay? And then quickly you go to two. And most businesses, when they start in the first 3, 4, 5, it's usually a round structure. There is no hierarchy, right? You don't have a bunch of people reporting to somebody because there's not a bunch of people. So usually what happens is they create a flat organization or round organization, which means everybody kind of does a bunch of job functions, right? The CEO is doing everything at the beginning, and then he hires number two. And number two is kind of doing everything, and then he hires number three, and number three is doing everything. This is fine when you have, between 3 and 5 employees. But after 5, it gets pretty complicated. And if you don't put together an org chart or an organizational structure, as it's called, what ends up happening is you have a ton of people that are reporting to one person or looking to one person for all the decision making, and it becomes unmanageable, right? So imagine this org chart here, and let me just grab the eraser here so I can edit this here. And if you look at the org chart here, what ends up happening is this is what happens a lot of businesses why they don't scale. They hire number one, they hire number two, they hire number three, they're all reporting to the main guy, right? And then number 4 and 5 come into the mix, okay? And now these guys are reporting to the main guy. And then you hire number 6. And this is where businesses stall out, okay? Because it's not efficient to have 6 people reporting to one guy, right? What happens is that there's too much intake for this guy. So you start to realize why businesses have this hierarchy that ends up looking a bit more like this. You have the 3 people that report to the CEO, and then underneath, you have 3 people that report to this guy. And you have 3 people that may report to this guy. And maybe just one person or 2 people that report to this guy, okay? And these are job functions. So again, at the beginning, it's round, it's flat, everybody's reporting to the CEO, they're all reporting to each other, and they all, a lot of times when you're first starting, they all do everything, they all do every job. But as soon as you start to scale, you need to start specializing these jobs out. So the CEO is here, and then maybe in the round structure that you had, right? You had the CEO, you had someone that did marketing, but they did everything else too. You had someone else that did sales, but they did a little bit of marketing. and you had someone else that did fulfillment, but they also did a little bit of sales, right? And all of these guys all kind of talk to each other and try to figure out where to take the business. When you get here, it may be that this guy is chief marketing officer. And under him, you have your social media manager, right? And maybe your content creator, right? So this guy's posting, this guy's creating content. This is your marketing. You may have a digital graphics guy here, right? As you expand this out. Over here, you may have sales manager or a chief operating officer, depending on how deep we want to go. I'm going to make this guy a chief operating officer, right? A COO, chief operating officer. And then under him, you may have sales and fulfillment. I'm abbreviating everything here. And over here, you may have a CFO, which is traditionally the structure, guys. There's usually the CFO and the COO underneath the CEO. And then off of the CFO, you may have your accountant, right? You may have your audit committee or an audit individual or a bookkeeper that comes under here. Now imagine if you didn't have an organizational structure. What ends up happening is you have the fulfillment guy, the sales guy, the bookkeeper, the auditor, the accountant, the social media manager, and the content manager reporting to the CEO. And what ends up happening is this guy is strained. The CEO is strained and he can't make effective decisions, have effective conversations, or make effective business moves for his business because he's trying to communicate with way too many people. There's only 24 hours in the days, guys, right? So this is the importance of an organizational structure and an org chart in your organizational and management plan. So if you're putting together a business plan, this is really one of the bigger cruxes of the organizational plan and the management plan. If you're starting a business, what you should do is forward your business to the next 5 years, 10 years. Where do you see it, right? Do you see it at a $10 million business, a $100 million business, a $1 billion business? Okay, what does the org chart look like for that $100 million business, $1 billion business, $10 million business, right? Depending on how big you want to get. If you want to get as large as possible, what I recommend to my clients to do is go find the Fortune 500 org chart and just copy and paste it, right? Because that's what it's going to look like in the future. That's what it's going to look like in the future. And then what you do is you can start checking them off one by one. So once you have an in-depth organizational structure or an in-depth org chart, as we like to call it, then you can start checking them off one by one and say, okay, let me go get the CFO first, right? And then let me go get the social media manager, or really sales should be at the top of the list here, right? As the first guy you get, and then, maybe marketing to get the sales. But these are really the first two hires that you want to have in most companies. And then you start checking them off and filling off the boxes, and you can kind of color code them to say, okay, these are the guys we're going to have in year one. These are the guys we're going to have in year two. These are going to have the guys in year three. Now, just a cautionary tale after having, over 2,000 clients and running businesses myself and seeing the ins and outs of successful and failed businesses. One of the things you want to make sure, if you do plan to scale your business and you do plan to, eventually have 10, 20, 100 employees, 1,000 employees, that at the very beginning, these employees are completely different than this. And what I mean by that is your first 4 or 5 employees need to be mavericks, right? They need to be able to do just about everything because at the beginning, you don't need a manager. You need doers. You need people that are going to do. You don't need someone to manage a social media, a marketing department. You need someone to do the marketing, right? You need someone to create the content. You need someone to put up the videos on YouTube. You need someone to create the content for Instagram. You need someone to create the content for LinkedIn. You don't need someone to manage. Here, this chief, let's call him a CMO, chief marketing officer, right? He's in charge of managing people, which is a totally different job than this guy who may be your social media manager, right? Or this guy who may be your content creator, or this guy who may be your graphic designer, right? These people are doers. This guy's a manager. Same thing across the board. This COO, right? A good COO is a manager. He's not working. He is managing a sales team. He is managing maybe a fulfillment team, right? This guy's a manager. when you're here, when you're at your first three, you don't need a manager because there's nobody to manage. There's not enough people there. You need a doer here. So keep that in mind. And when you scale, let's say this is number one, you, the CEO, right? Let's say this is number two, a really good sales guy. And remember, more than likely, two, three, four, or five are kind of jack of all trades. They're doing everything with you because you don't know which part of the business is going to expand first, or how fast it's going to expand. So you kind of need these guys to be nimble and flexible in their job duties. But when you get to scale, that number two, who may have been fantastic at creating content and he's killing it for you on LinkedIn, or she's killing it for you on Instagram or YouTube, right? They may not be the best manager to manage the group of people that you're going to need to scale the business. So just keep that in mind, that the people you grow with aren't the people that you're going to be at the top with sometimes, right? That statement's very true. Now, can these people become that, right? Yes. Is it normally the case? Usually not. And as a matter of fact, usually the number one, the CEO entrepreneur, the person who started the business, usually doesn't make a really good CEO either. So be conscious of that too. If you are a CEO or entrepreneur, that maybe you're not the best guy or woman to run the organization because you're not a manager. You don't like to manage people. You like to create things. You like to do things, right? So that's the importance of an organizational structure. And that's it in a nutshell. Okay. The next part of your management and organizational plan is the management team section. So this is just going to outline all of these job titles one by one, and you're going to fill in who that person is if you have them. If not, you're going to say to be determined or to be hired, and then what their job description is, right? What do they do? This is important for later because as soon as you want to hire this salesperson, you want to know, hey, what are they going to be doing? What's their job description? A little hack for this. So again, this is section A, org chart, right? And then section B, I'm going to put over here, is the management team. Management team. Okay. And a little hack for getting the job descriptions is go on LinkedIn or go on Career Builder or go on any of these sites that have jobs listed, and you'll be able to see some data from there and grab that information so it fits the profile. If you don't have a good job description when you're looking for these employees, you won't get the right employee in, right? So the job description is super important, and laying out all of the descriptions of what they're supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to be doing, what kind of characteristics or skill sets you need in that individual and in your management team. You want to list that all out in the second section. So section one, organizational chart or organizational structure. And section two, management team, right? Who are the managers? What are they going to be doing? Which managers do you need? You may need a CIO, Chief Information Officer, Chief Technology, a CTO, Chief Technology Officer if you're running a technology company, right? If you're running a media company, it could be what do you call it? Editor, right? A chief editor, right? So it really depends on your company, what field you're in, or what industry you're in. Okay. So step one, organizational structure. Step two, management team. Describe each person on the team. Describe their job duties and exactly what they're going to be doing. Step C, or section C, I should say, of the management organizational plan is governance and ownership. So here I'm gonna put gov and ownership, okay? So in section C, what you're describing is who owns the company, right? And how do you govern the company? Is it owned in an L? Who owns it? Is it owned by, just the CEO? Is it owned by a group of investors? And then what's the governance like? Is it an LLC? Is it a partnership? Is it a corporation? These things will matter because it'll be the difference between, does the partnership agreement run the organization, or do the articles of organization run the organization, or does an operating agreement in the form of, in the case of an LLC, run the organization? That's the third section, right? Governance and ownership. You just want to lay that out. If you're presenting a business plan to outside stakeholders, they usually want to know that. If you're trying to get an investment or a bank loan, if you're presenting the business plan internally, right, to your employees or your other stakeholders, vendors, suppliers, they want to know, hey, how do we run this, right? What's the criteria for making decisions? Who's the final decision layout? And that's in the government and the governance and ownership section. So again, You're going to list who owns it and then how they own it, right? So do they own it through LLC membership units? Do they own it through common stock or preferred stock in a corporation? Do they own it through partnership units because you guys are a partnership? Okay, so that's C. So A, B, C, organizational structure, management team, governance and ownership, and D is your staffing plan. Staffing plan. Okay, so this is generally how you plan on hiring and when you plan on hiring, right? So who are your current team members? And then who are the future team members? And what I like to do is I like to keep this section short because I really like to define it in the org chart. I think pictures are a great way to define things in any plan or graphics, right? And what I like to do in the org chart is color code it, right? So anything, let's say in green is who you have currently, and anything in red is who you're going to have in the future. And you can color code this, to the max and say, year one is going to be, the current guys are green. The guys for year two or women in year two that we recruit are going to be in red. And then for year three, they're going to be in yellow. And then for year four, they're going to be in blue and so on and so forth. So you can really show a picture of, look, this is how our organization is going to expand. And again, remember why this is necessary, because if you get too many people reporting to any one person, it becomes inefficient, right? And as you can see, this is why sometimes you look at organizations, you're like, man, this organization's bloated, right? Or it's too big, or I can do it faster. Well, at scale, you're going to need a lot of these middle management layers to make sure that people are organized right. Okay, so that's the staffing plan is D. And the last section that I like to include in management and organizational plan is your advisory board. Okay, so I always like to say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. But generally, you want to have people that have been in your industry, that have more experience than you, be in your advisory board. And they usually fall into the chart either as an advisory committee and or a board of directors. So I'm just going to erase this so I can show you guys something with the org chart. So one of the things that you don't see in this org chart that's I'm kind of going backwards here, um, is your board of directors. And not every company has a board of directors, but most companies, and definitely all big companies, all Fortune 500s, all publicly traded companies have a board of directors. But they should. And they stand above the CEO. So the board of directors votes on who the CEO is, and the CEO hires everybody else down, right? The owners, the board of directors are put there, are voted there, and this is in a public company or a stock corporation, are put there by the shareholders. Okay, so the shareholders vote in your board of directors, 1, 2, 3. Usually it's an odd number. It could be 5, it could be 7, it could be 9. It's an odd number so they don't get deadlocked on a vote. And they usually vote depending on how you put together your operating agreement or your articles of organization. They usually vote on very important matters, but the most important really is who the CEO is going to be. And they vote on that. That CEO hires everybody else out. This can also be your advisory committee. Your board of directors could also be. Now, it's not always the case that they're the advisory, right? But they usually are, right? They're usually more sophisticated. They have more experience. They've been in the industry longer, and they're kind of like the old wise owls that advise the CEO on the overall direction of the company, and then the CEO goes and implements that direction by putting together a team and pushing the business plan, which is usually developed at this level up here, down to this level down here. Okay, so that's your board of directors on the top or your advisory team. Your advisory team, just to be clear, is not a board of directors. They don't have the control to hire and fire the CEO. So I don't want to put this up here if that's the board of directors, right? But if they're an advisory team, you can usually put them off to the side here of the CEO and kind of put them like this, right? And your advisory team, again, is you want to put people that have been in your industry. So look for, partners of yours that are in the supply chain, people that maybe are experts in your field of marketing, maybe people that have grown a business sales wise comparable to where you want to go. This should be on your advisory team, okay? So I hope this was helpful. If you're putting together a management and organizational plan, These are the key components that you need. I would spend a lot of time on the organizational structure and making sure you understand who are the pieces that you need, right, to grow your business to where you want to be. It's different for every single company. If you're a manufacturer, there's going to be a chief operating officer, and then there's going to be a ton of CNC workers and engineers down here, right? If you're a media company, maybe there's writers, graphic designers, and video content guys down here in this operating side, right? So keep that in mind. If you guys need any help putting together a business plan or an organizational plan or a management plan, I can definitely help you. And if you guys like this video, give it the thumbs up, share it with somebody that you think it could be helpful with, and I'll catch you guys on the next run.